You're listening to the Patient Advocacy Now podcast, presented by Greater National Advocates.
It's just gut-wrenching sometimes. Like, if it's sad and they're crying, I might cry.
Amazing how many doctors do not even want to treat somebody who has Medicaid.
Medical system is about making money.
And I said, so are you hiring more nurses, or you're just telling each nurse to work harder?
Kayla, thank you so much for being here.
Thank you for having me, John.
Yeah, always excited to talk to another advocate. And you're in an area of the country where you're the first and only one of your kind in the area. Isn't that right?
Yes, a pioneer. Exciting and sometimes terrifying.
Yeah, for sure. The Eastern Shore of Maryland is where you're based out of. And like most advocates, you help people kind of virtually as well, I take it. Yeah?
Correct. Yes.
I'm going to ask you about your history and how you get started, because there's a lot of people who are interested in that. But even before that, I'm kind of curious, one of the biggest challenges of the advocacy space is that people just don't know what it is, or that it exists, or that it's available, or that it's a private pay service. And because you're the only one in your area, how are you finding that in your own kind of growth in your career? And how are you kind of, what are you doing to kind of overcome that challenge?
Yeah, well, it is certainly the biggest challenge I think I face every day with trying to grow my business. Certainly, I've spent a lot of time and continued attention with local networking efforts amongst the community. Chamber of Commerce has been really helpful for me. Health fairs, just continuing to try to get the word out. I think we all say the same thing. We're like the best kept secret in healthcare. Mm-hmm. Hopefully one day that will change. But you asked a second question there about the awareness of paying for services. Yeah. And I have, I think, a little bit of a different take on that than a lot of other people that I've seen in the field.
Yeah, I'd love to hear it. That's why I'm asking.
Typically across the board, we tend to operate under the title of independent patient advocate. And at least for me in my area, I got a lot of kind of confusion around that title. Partly because, hospitals and insurance people now have roles inside them called patient advocates. And what they do is definitely not what I do.
Yeah, they kind of work for the hospital, not the patient.
Yeah, I've only ever met the patient advocate when a family was threatening a lawsuit. So,
yeah, that's a good tell that it's a different kind of role.
Right? And I also had got the feedback that the word advocate tends to be politicized. Additionally, across the board in other industries, an advocate is not typically somebody that you expect to pay out of pocket for. And
when you say other industries, do you have specific verticals that you're thinking of?
No, but I mean, even if you think in the political realm, if you hear, that person, so-and-so is an advocate for that cause.
Oh, yeah, sure.
You don't pay though for that.
Like a volunteer position of sorts.
Right. And that was honestly a lot of the feedback that I got. People thought that these services were free. And I could understand that. So instead of fighting against that perception, I said, well, let's change it. So I now call myself a personal medical strategist.
Right. And that I could see why you do that. There's a self-explanatory kind of element to what it is you do. The strategy being, well, the medical as well, but there's a component where it's like, I kind of get that. Mm-hmm. And I think strategist kind of connotes money as well. Like there's a fee tied to it. Not a negative.
Subtly. Right. I think it helps to subtly kind of lay that expectation for potential clients before we even have to have that interaction.
Right.
But more than that, I sat and brainstormed one day, what does the words patient advocate really mean? And to me, when you take it down to its core, to advocate means to amplify the voice. So to amplify the voice of the patient. But one thing that I have found through my work is a lot of times patients don't know really what they need. I mean, honestly, that's why they're seeking out this kind of support. And so simply amplifying their voice isn't all that helpful.
Right.
And what I found is the root to my work, it all comes down to strategy. There's lots of moving parts in healthcare.
Mm-hmm.
And trying to throw the kitchen sink at somebody and see what sticks isn't usually the best way to go about it. We need to be a little bit more strategic with our medical approach. And so that's why I decided to lean into that.
Yeah. I love that you're kind of staying flexible and bobbing and weaving and figuring it out. My hope is one day independent patient advocate is, synonymous enough with what the actual service is that people know to pay, so that and maybe we can even get it to be like a protected term like therapist or doctor or nurse, so that you have to kind of go through some kind of qualification screening process. And I know we have the certification, there's the PAC board and everything, but some kind of process where it's like, okay, yes, this person is an advocate, and there's kind of an expected like fee range so people know what they're getting into. But until then, you do what you need to do to kind of keep light on and also communicate it easier. So bravo. I mean, I think that's a smart kind of marketing piece, which is a title change is in my eyes a marketing piece.
It is truly. I mean, it hasn't changed the work that I do. It just helps communicate what that is on the outside.
Okay, great. Now, before I get into how you strategize and the way you work with your clients, because everybody does it slightly different, walk me back and tell me where this kind of fascination with the body and helping people kind of started for you, and how you ended up in this space.
Absolutely. So really two core things landed me where I am now. One of them being fascination with the human body. It's always been a hobby of mine to figure out how it works, why it goes wrong, and what we do next. One of my earliest childhood memories, I was 5, and my mom had fixed lunch on this pink plastic Barbie plate that I was obsessed with at age 5. That's now how I know. And I begged her to let me eat lunch on the couch that day because I was watching the brain surgery on Discovery Health, and I just had to finish watching it. So there were signs that I was definitely going to do something in the healthcare space.
A different kind of egg for sure. I never watched Discovery Health. Yeah, that was one of those channels you flipped through very quickly as a kid, but you kind of went, no,
top 3.
Me, what's that one?
Yeah, I've also probably seen every episode of Mystery Diagnosis.
Wow. Okay. Did you like House too when it was fictionalized, or was that like too sensational?
No, that was fun too. But that was before I really knew all of the medical things. It's this crux. Once you get into healthcare, I became a nurse. So once you become a nurse, it's hard to watch medical dramas because of all the inaccuracies.
Sure, absolutely.
But my second big thing is I've always been a helper, and I always knew that I wanted to help people. I didn't quite understand exactly what that would be. I thought initially, okay, love the human body, want to help people. I'm going to be a doctor. I spent my whole first year of college on a pre-med track until somebody pulled me into a nursing seminar, literally in May of my first year. And it became clear to me that doctors treat diseases and nurses treat people. Now, of course, that's an oversimplification.
Sure.
But I was like, you know what? I don't want to be tending clipboards and, just prescribing and all the things that go around disease management. I really want to treat the whole person. So that's how I got steered to nursing.
Mm-hmm. It's interesting. And I think I don't know when you went to school, but that's become more true over time. And I think maybe if you go back far enough where there was one town doctor in small areas, maybe they did have more of that holistic approach. But now, as kind of hospitals are being bought by these big conglomerates, and doctors have no time to see the patients, there's more and more and more of that. And I think even nurses kind of have to kind of become that way in some settings as well.
Oh yeah, it's always do more with less.
So what was your experience like as a nurse then?
Well, working for real as a bedside nurse in healthcare starting in 2015 up until 2024, it's not what they put in the brochure. I spent so much time. Gosh, I would look around and I'm like, I feel used. Does anybody else feel used? Like, I got into healthcare to help people. And I mean, there'd be some days I'd question if I really helped anybody.
Wow.
Yeah.
So when was the shift for you? How long did you, well, first of all, what kind of departments did you work on? What kind of rotations were you as a nurse?
Yeah, so I've had a few different things over my career, but mostly ER and ICU.
Okay. So you were just back to back with kind of big bad things that were happening.
Yeah, a little bit of an adrenaline junkie.
Okay.
I kind of want to figure out the crisis and then move on.
Yeah. Okay. Interesting. And how long did you practice bedside for?
9.5 years.
Wow. And were you disillusioned kind of from year one, or was it like a slow burn for you?
Oh, it was pretty quick.
Wow.
I don't even think I was off of orientation before I started to question what I was doing here. There's just, the system. Well, I used to say that the healthcare system is broken. Although I'm not sure it is. I think it's working exactly the way it was designed. It's just not designed for patients or the bedside providers.
Right.
I have some ideas on who it is designed for.
Well, there's not many people left in that equation, so I gotcha.
And I thought maybe I just need more of a challenge. So I had started on a step-down unit in the hospital, and I was pretty quickly recruited over to ICU. And that, my friends, it's intensive care for a reason. Actually, the orientation process into ICU I found to be just as difficult as nursing school. There's just so many things that exist in the critical care environment that aren't in other areas of nursing.
Wow.
But then even then, so the excitement of the new challenge started to wear off, and then you started to notice patterns amongst the patients and started to realize that a lot of the things are bringing patients back into the hospital over and over again. I couldn't fix standing there at the bedside.
Mm-hmm.
And then there were also, then I started to keep track of the amount of times that my direct intervention on a case ended up being the difference between life or death for somebody.
Yeah, I see it on Instagram all the time. Nurses are still saying it, and they don't always use the same language as the doctor, but then and so they get laughed at sometimes. And then when that ends up that they're right, there's no thank you, there's no apology. Talk about burnout.
Yeah. Yeah, that's so interesting. I had an experience where the hospital I spent the bulk of my career at went through a buyout with another hospital, and there were lots of changes that occurred afterwards. One of the changes happened to be my position. My position that I was in was getting eliminated, and they said, "Well, you have the option to move into this one or this one." And they were structured in different ways, but both of them were going to be less pay and not a little bit less. And what's interesting is that conversation occurred the day after I came in on my day off to help in the ICU because they were totally overwhelmed. They had nurses from the regular floors had been pulled in to help with these critical care patients, but without the background and training. And I ended up taking over somebody's assignment for a patient who was really unstable and going downhill quickly. There were some things about her condition that had been overlooked prior to my arrival. And through some swift interventions, we were able to get her stabilized, but she was on the brink of death. And my charge nurse actually went to my supervisor and was like, "Hey, I just want you to know if Kayla hadn't come in today, that lady would have died. Like, I can say that with certainty." And then the very next day is when they were like, hey, take this pay cut.
Yeah, that's brutal. What a kick in
Yeah.
the balls. Jeez.
Yeah.
Okay, so when did you decide, or when did you discover that there was a different path for you that might work better for you?
Yeah. So I spent years recognizing that there's limitations with my roles, that I just couldn't shake this feeling that I was meant to do something more, but I didn't know what that would be. And I spent a long time trying to convince myself that, plenty of other people are content with a career in nursing. Like, who am I to think that I should be doing something bigger or better? It really negative self-talk, but it's like, if you can't figure out another option, like, what are you going to do other than try to find peace in the situation you're in? But it was through taking care of a patient who had a little bit of a rare diagnosis, who she went through like 6 years of bouncing around before she actually got a diagnosis, was getting written off by physicians, chalked up to anxiety. Nope, turns out she has an actual medical problem. You just didn't recognize it. But part of her story was finding and reaching out to an independent patient advocate. And as I was hearing the story, I said, I'm sorry, a what? I had never heard that phrase before. And so that got me really excited. I was like, hold on, advocate. I'm a great advocate. I was like, I've been fiercely fighting for my patients in between managing their life support. Wait a minute, you mean I could just do that? But
What's also, I think it's telling that you, as a nurse with years of experience, had never heard of it either. Just real.
as I mentioned, first in my area.
Right.
But I was like, oh my gosh, that's literally, I said, that is a job made for me. And so I went down the Google hole and found out very quickly, it's not a job. You have to start a business. And I was like, oh, I know zero about that.
Right.
So I thought to myself, I'm just going to kind of put that idea on the back burner. And then I got pregnant with our second child, and I was like, oh, okay, yeah, now is definitely not the time to start a business. And that was all well and good until it wasn't. We went in for our first ultrasound at 11 weeks and found out that our very wanted daughter had passed. And the medical mismanagement that I experienced with that was just horrific. And it was very eye-opening to really how bad the system is and how hard it is to fight for your care when you're the one in the stretcher, even when you know how the stuff works. And I would have given anything, had I known somebody at that point in time, to not have to fight for my care. And once I recovered and healed physically, mentally, and emotionally, I told my husband, I said, I have no idea what this is going to look like or what it's going to take, but I have to do this. I said, because like nobody should be treated and have to go through what I went through. And that was the fire that gave birth to Heard for Life.
And that's the name of your company, Heard for Life?
Yes. Heard is actually an acronym for Health Empowerment Through Advocacy for Patients' Rights and Dignities.
Oh, nice.
But of course, oftentimes what I hear from my clients is they want to be heard.
Yeah, there's a lot of feeling unheard for sure.
Yeah.
Okay. And so how do you work with clients? Do you get in the weeds with coordination between providers, with fighting for pharmaceuticals? Like, where do you find, is it like whatever they need? And what kind of population do you find yourself working with the most?
Yeah. So it's funny, when you start a business, you have an idea in mind with what you're going to do and who you're going to serve. And over time, if you're wise enough to listen, that will shift.
Yeah.
So that's definitely been my experience as well. And I do think, and other people feel free to reach out and correct me if I'm wrong, but I think that I work with people in a much different capacity than most other advocates. So in my experience, most advocates, they kind of typically generally help people with like healthcare navigation type stuff and keep track of hours and bill time per hour. I found a lot of challenges with that. So where I live is, it's technically rural. So I don't have a lot of patient or population density to work with. And I think that that's important here in my story because it's made me have to get real clever with the population that is here.
Sure.
So I heard over and over from people, I just want somebody to tell me what to do. They're okay with going to the doctor themselves or taking mom to the doctor, but they just don't know what to do. So they really were looking for that kind of guidance as opposed to the execution of things.
When you say someone to tell me what to do, where was the roadblock for them? I mean, if they're going to the doc, are they not getting, like, are people still in pain and suffering? And they're like,
yeah, typically not getting the runaround or not getting the solution, getting bounced around. And then people don't know what to do next.
right. So they were
How to make.
very much problem aware, right? But they're like, I don't know how to fix this. You tell me how to fix it. Okay, gotcha. Okay,
Yeah.
I'm with you.
Yeah. But then what I was hearing over and over is like people wanted to solve problems themselves. They just didn't know how. So I think a lot of advocates focus a bit more on the like, I'll go to your doctor's appointment with you. I'll call the insurance company for you. And I will do those things as well. However, it's not my focus. So I work with people typically who fall in the category of what I like to call medical misfits. So undiagnosed or perhaps misdiagnosed and usually dismissed by their current medical team. And whatever they've been trying, they still can't get to where they're trying to go, whether that be a treatment, a surgery, an answer, etc. So I take my clients through what I call a medical roadmap. So it's broken into 3 parts. First, we do a really intensive 90-minute deep dive session via Zoom. So this is not a specific local offering. It's nationwide, where I start to get a really good understanding of what's going on with them. And I have quite a knack for pattern recognition and connecting the dots where others haven't. That really is my bread and butter. So for instance, I had a client who was a very young, healthy, well woman. She's like early 50s. And she started having headaches and then like a whole cluster of weird, seemingly unrelated symptoms. And her primary doctor didn't know it was wrong and sent her to the neurologist who couldn't find anything that was wrong and sent her to the cardiology, couldn't find anything. And I'll be honest, when I first got the call, I thought to myself, I was like, oh God, I don't know what's wrong with her.
Right.
I said, how am I supposed to help her? But through the initial 90-minute session, I listened very intently. And there were certain things she was telling me that I'm like, this just doesn't add up with the line of thinking and the treatment that they've been pursuing. So through that initial deep dive session, I then go back and strategize. And I think really critically about what is going on with the client, what I think potentially could be going on. I don't pretend that I know what's wrong. I certainly can't diagnose anybody. But I am really good at writing questions that police would say would lead the witness. Because in a doctor's appointment, you got to kind of leave the breadcrumbs.
Right.
So that they get to where you want them to be, but without you telling them.
Sure.
So I'm really good at that too. So
How do you why can't you just tell them outright? Is it an ego thing, or do they're like, oh, do you look that up on WebMD? Like
Also, yes.
okay, man, it's horrible that we have to play these games. Okay,
I know, right?
yeah,
But here's the way I look at it is like we can't change that system, but we can change our approach.
right.
So that's the goal here at Heard for Life is recognizing that that is what it is. There are people working on systemic change. God bless them. I hope they can figure something out. My brain is not wired to fix that problem, but I can help individuals find the exit paths around the barriers.
Well, and I think it's really clever because you take, a 10-minute doctor or a 15-minute doctor appointment, you listen to the patient for 90 minutes with your own kind of skill set in recognizing patterns. And then you have time to also strategize how to get those like 5-6 questions for the doctor to make them go, well, it sounds like you might have this. And you're like, yes.
That's exactly it, John. I know it's a shame that like that's what you need to do, but well, if you want your appointments to start working for you, that's what you need to do. And you know what? Actually, on that point, this might be a good time to mention. I recognize that everybody needs to employ this level of strategy for their doctor's appointments. And with that in mind, I actually created a free doctor's appointment prep guide for anybody who wishes to download that and start getting some strategy for themselves around appointments.
Yeah, how do people get that? Is it on your website somewhere?
Sure is. It's heardforlife.com/guide.
Oh, okay. Easy. So just /guide on your main website, heardforlife.com/guide. Great. Wonderful of you to put that out there. That's great. Okay.
Yes. Anyways, after our deep dive strategy session, I actually put together a written action plan for my clients. So through that conversation, there's usually comes up maybe 4 or 5 kind of main action areas that they need to work on. And then I break it down into like literally step 1, do this, step 2, do this. So that, it's a lot, but then they have a very clear roadmap. That's why I call it a medical roadmap for how to tackle this problem. And then they take that action plan and implement it for 2 or 3 weeks or so. And then we come back around and have an evaluation call, because all best plans, especially in the medical world, tend to need some adjustment.
Sure.
So not only do I operate with that high-level strategic approach and break down that step-by-step action plan for them, but I don't price per hour. It's a flat price, which is feedback that I got a lot from my community, because people would say, oh, I'm kind of looking for help with this. How much is that going to cost?
Right.
My answer would be, I don't know. How many hours do you want?
Yeah, that doesn't work for people who are trying to budget and understand. Sure.
Yeah, and I get that. I mean, it for me, from a buyer's perspective, if you can't tell me exactly what you're going to give me and how much it's going to cost, I don't want to buy either.
Right.
So with the medical roadmap, we guarantee that we will deliver you an action plan. Otherwise, I will refund you. If for some reason you have something going on that I can't help you with, I am not going to keep your money. And it's a flat fee. It's $425.
And then you work with them for that 90 minutes, and then you have some adjustment that goes with it with the 2-3 weeks after the follow-up. Yep. And then do you tend to work with patients after that initial kind of?
Yeah. So usually they get a good bit of progress, but then it also kind of reveals the fact that there's more work to do, right?
And, sure, of course.
So I do also have a back end offer, which is, again, it's a flat monthly fee. And then if they want to say, oh, actually, can you call the insurance company for this for me? Then I have an hourly rate. But at least we do the monthly strategy calls. So like we do in that initial session, we do a smaller session every month, right, so that we can start to shift from reactive into proactive. And most people, that guidance is all they need, and then they take the rest and run with it.
Very clever. Very clever. So, I mean, it sounds like, there are some benefits and drawbacks. For you and for the patient, it's kind of funny. So you're solving a lot of the issues that I think patients have, where there's a lack of clarity and there's a lack of transparency in what they get and the pricing, which is like a immortal problem, like in the medical field, which I'm sure leads to a lot of very happy clients. It sounds like you might have a slightly higher churn because there's going to be people who fall off after the initial stuff. Do you find that you have to kind of keep broadening your net and like as a business owner, or is the referrals, because people are so happy, like they end up, does it balance out?
So in all full transparency, it's only been a few months since I've switched to this model. Yeah. However, there's very few people who come in my world who don't turn into clients. And there's only been two who haven't gone from that initial session into the ongoing support. And one of them, it was my choice.
Yeah, sure. You could fire clients. That happens all the time. I mean, the reason I'm asking is a lot of advocates listen to the podcast, and I think everybody's always curious, like, what is the model that benefits everybody? I want to have a stable business, and I also want my patients to feel like there's true transparency. It sounds like if this works, this could solve a lot of the issues. So
it has been night and day for me because, I really sat and thought about what is the minimum kind of like price point and time commitment where somebody could. Right. And then it really gives the client like structure and ownership over how they want to handle things moving forward, because they get, honestly, if they're not in a crisis and we can get them pretty stabilized, they get pretty much everything they need in that monthly base rate.
Right.
But then they have access to, I call it flex up hands-on support if they want that higher level. Like right now I have somebody who is going through, oh my gosh, I'm calling it the medical merry-go-round now. There are updates on Facebook with details, but she's facing physician abandonment. And so we're having to go through a lot of channels, and she was managing it on her own with my guidance initially, and then got to a point she's like, I can't do this anymore. Just take over. So it gives it gives my clients that flexibility to, it takes away the overwhelm of trying to figure out what to do. And so they can go work on the execution, or they can raise their hand and go, I'm done with this. Can you step in, please?
Well, and it sounds like it's not just the people who are done. I mean, there's going to be many different types of people who want you to take over certain services. So there's going to be people who maybe they have a higher earning capacity, and it makes sense for me to pay you so I can go, work. There are going to be people who are just burned out, which is the ones you're kind of like, I'm sick, I can't do this. Right. And then there's going to be certain people where it's like, there's too much above what I'm willing to learn, and it's confusing to me. If you take care of this, it would just alleviate some of that emotional stress. So I think you're hitting on all three kind of trigger poles there.
Yeah. Where I think I'm a little bit different from the bulk of advocates is the focus of my support is it's kind of like a done with you service, whereas opposed
for you.
Right. And that is really because that was the feedback I was getting from my community, is that was more of the support people are looking for. It's a really blue collar area. And I get it. So let me tell you, I'm a DIY person myself.
Sure.
My husband and I actually bought a 100-year-old farmhouse and gutted it to the studs and rebuilt it ourselves. So I get the mindset of the person who just wants some guidance and instruction, but wants to handle it themselves. So I said, I think that's my people. I'm going to lean.
It's also a really good way to build a tremendous amount of trust, so that if someone wants to or needs to hire you for a more done for you type service, there's a relationship there, right? They've actually built it with you over time, and they're like, Kayla's the best. Just give her the money and let her take care of it, for those people who want or need it. But for those of us who are more DIY, it's like, oh, this is great. I feel empowered. I know there are kind of caps on the spending here, and I'll get what I need. I think it's a great kind of choose your own adventure style to Well, on advocacy, that's really smart.
Thank you. Yeah, it's been great for my clients.
Is there a hole in any of this where like I wish I had an insurance advocate to partner with, or like a legal person because there's some, I see a lot of malpractice that needs attention? Or do you feel like, what, because of the way you've designed your business, it's actually I know it's only a few months old this way, but like it's actually pretty stable?
So I have a billing advocate that I work with really closely.
Great.
And so some things some kind of more basic things I can manage myself. But if it's that fighting the bills, that's a nice clean referral over to her. So I've got that side pretty covered. I don't have anybody in my net so far who is legal. So that would be a great connection. But it also hasn't come up yet.
But I think that like you answered the question, like, yes, there's a hole and I filled it with another advocate, like that's a great answer, because there is a kind of a nice camaraderie amongst advocates. Like, I'm good at this if you need help. And then I'll also like, I'm not as good at the medical strategy part. And so I'm sure we can work together and make like a strong team, which is great.
Absolutely.
Okay. That's awesome. And so it sounds like it's not condition dependent. It's more like the people are facing problems and they don't know how to get solutions, and those are the people who typically find you. That's interesting. That's great. And in terms of marketing, how do you even get people to know you exist in the first place? I haven't started my own
question. I am still trying to answer. Hoping that doing things like this will help.
Sure. Well, where has your existing client base come from?
Mostly from referrals, a couple from GNA. So
great.
That's been helpful, but it's mostly been word of mouth.
Awesome. Well, is there any, let's say so it's heardforlife.com/guide. And it sounds like that's kind of the complete DIY version, where it's like, here, at least if you don't have the funds or you're not ready to make the commitment, here's like how you dip your toe in the water of prepping for that infamous 10 minutes you have with your doctor, and that's it. So I think that's great if people want to download it. It's free, you said?
Yep, it's a free download, and it's actually 2 parts. So there's the PDF guide that you download that's got the 5 steps for the strategy. But part 2 is actually an invitation to book a free strategy call with me, which,
Great.
In full disclosure, if it's a good fit for somebody, I do talk to them about my services. But regardless if it is or not, I have a sheet that I keep right here with 15 different actionable insights that I can offer during that call. So people always walk away with something. It is not strictly a sales call. My goal is to truly provide value and get them unstuck at least a little bit.
Yeah. One of the things I love about this space is these, every advocate I've met so far, at least on my end, has been in it for the right reasons to help people. And so I've never ran into like a sleazy snake oil salesman type in our space. And
oh no, this is way too difficult of a business to get off the ground.
Yeah. So money. Right. So everybody who calls an advocate should know, like, everybody kind of wants to help, like, yes, of course we need to make a living doing it. But, it's like the first and primary reason you're in it is like people should have a healthy life as much as possible. Okay, so heardforlife.com is where they could find you, /guide to get the free guide. This has been totally eye-opening. Is there anything else you want to kind of leave people with or add that we haven't covered? I mean, I'm sure we could talk for hours, but anything kind of top of mind? Yeah.
I'm sure we could. But yeah, I think you did a good job hitting all the high points, John. Thank you.
Well, thank you, Kayla. I really appreciate it, and good luck with serving your area and beyond. And I know you're going to help a lot of people.
Thank you.